You grew up thinking your sensitivity was weakness, didn't you? But the truth is the opposite. You're not fragile, you're forged. Carl Jung saw this pattern countless times in Zurich and described it as one of the darkest and most fascinating transformations of the human psyche. Empaths aren't broken. They've spent years collecting invisible signals, sharpening perception, until the day they turn observation into decisive action. When that awakening happens, the entire game changes. The narcissist who thrived on your silence suddenly faces a wall of clarity and non-negotiable boundaries. And it's not chaos, not revenge. It's justice restored. Jung called it shadow integration, the moment when buried forces like righteous anger and assertiveness rise, not to destroy but to protect. That's when the empath stops being a target and becomes the author of their own story. I know this because I lived it. For years, I played the emotional shock absorber, swallowing discomfort and repeating, "It's fine," until one betrayal was too clear to ignore. It hurt, but it freed me. That day, I realized sensitivity isn't a curse. It's a radar, precise and sharp, waiting to become real power. And that's the map I'll share with you. 5 stages that take Jung's theory into practice. Turning your pain journal into a war room, recognizing the clarity event, holding surgical calm, and using power with ethics. Stick with me until the end, because this blueprint could be the turning point in your life. Jung spent decades watching this pattern repeat. Empaths walked in apologetic, blaming themselves for things that weren't theirs. Yet behind that softness was ruthless focus. Micro-expressions, tone shifts, triggers, patterns, archived in silence. And when betrayal finally forced them to trust what they sensed, they didn't explode. They went clinical. Anger became analysis. Pain became precision. That's the shift Jung called shadow integration, and it's where our journey begins. Ever notice how you keep doubting your own perception? Like the problem's always you? Jung showed that the shadow is made of the parts we bury. Strength, righteous anger, assertiveness. But when you suppress those, they don't vanish, they pile up. On the outside you look fragile, but inside you're carrying energy that, if directed with awareness, becomes clarity and power to decide. Jung saw this in empaths loaded with guilt, apologizing for existing. Look closer, though, and you find something chilling. Razor-sharp attention to detail. They catch tone changes, darting eyes, exact shifts in behavior. They think they're too sensitive. In truth, they're detectives of the human soul, gathering data no one else notices. It's like Sherlock Holmes afraid of his own deductions. You sense the truth but blame yourself instead of trusting it. And when you finally hit your limit, people think you explode emotionally. But in reality, it's closer to a calculated operation. Your mind already mapped the whole scene before you even reacted. I learned this firsthand. When I was being gaslit, I started writing things down. Dates, phrases, reactions. Patterns emerged. Apology, repetition, minimization. Seeing it on paper proved I wasn't exaggerating. That one practice gave me an inner steadiness no one else could give. Have you ever tried that? It's almost therapeutic. That's the secret. Sensitivity isn't a curse. It's a tool. What once felt like torture becomes a map. What once confused you suddenly makes sense. And when you trust those signals, it's like putting on glasses for the first time you finally see. And this is the real turning point. Using that hidden gift of observation to build psychological sovereignty. The same attention that drains you today can become clarity that no manipulator can twist. But before I show you how, we need to open the black box of why you sabotage yourself whenever you see these signs. Ever notice how you always end up playing the emotional shock absorber? It's like all the tension in the room, family, relationship, work, somehow lands on you. The mood gets heavy. Someone messes up, someone flips out, and before the bomb goes off, you're already there, soaking it up so things stay okay. On the surface, it looks like maturity, but in reality, it's like standing in front of an explosion with your chest wide open. This role hides in tiny, automatic habits you barely notice. Over-explaining when no one asked, apologizing on someone else's behalf, fixing other people's schedules, laughing nervously just to break the silence, repeating "it's fine" like it's some magic spell to hold the whole room together. But here's the catch. Every time you cast that spell, a piece of you wears down. And the hidden cost? Brutal. The exhaustion of carrying burdens that were never yours. The identity confusion. Are you living your own life, or just reacting to everyone else's meltdowns? The guilt that creeps in the moment you dare to say no, as if setting a boundary were the biggest sin. Before you know it, your calendar isn't yours anymore. It's just a series of other people's crises, and you've quietly stepped out of your own story. In everyday life, it shows up in small but telling ways. You had a doctor's appointment, but canceled because your partner picked a fight. At work, your coworker screwed up, and instead of dealing with the tension, you fixed it in silence. From the outside, people see generosity. But deep down, each one of those saves costs you life energy. It's like patching cracks in a wall you didn't even build. Let me throw you a quick exercise. Grab a piece of paper and write down 3 recent moments where you fixed something that wasn't yours to fix. Could be as small as covering a mistake or as big as carrying someone else's emotional baggage. That simple act cracks the pattern wide open. You start realizing it's not random. It's a script. And once you see the script, you start seeing yourself differently. If that hit home, smash the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. Share some topic ideas too, because honestly, the deepest reflections usually come straight from your lived experience. Now, here's the kicker. This shock absorber role doesn't come out of nowhere. It's rooted in something way deeper. A quiet fear that shapes every connection you have with others. When you journal your pain, you usually write it like a diary entry. What they did to me today, how I felt afterward. And sure, that helps you vent, but it also keeps you stuck in the role of victim. The shift happens when you start treating those entries like investigation notes. Instead of just unloading the suffering, you record who acted, when it happened, what came before, and what came after. Suddenly, that same page that used to be a wall of lament turns into a strategic map. That flip is powerful because it turns raw intuition into something sharp. Chronic gaslighting makes you doubt your own memory, like facts are smoke slipping through your fingers. But when you externalize it, laying out a timeline, you give shape to the invisible. What once felt like vague sensations now stands as hard evidence. Your perception stops being a guilty hunch and becomes a clear recognition of patterns. It's the difference between guessing and running an X-ray. Then comes the second breakthrough. Those records start becoming an action plan. You break it down: fact, date, impact, boundary, consequence. It's not about being cold or aggressive. It's about building clarity. Writing on day X, person Y did Z, which caused W, makes it easier to decide where your patience ends and your protection begins. It's no longer emotional improvisation. It's an executable protocol. The analogy couldn't be clearer. You step out of the victim diary and walk into a war room. Picture maps on the wall, arrows connecting events, hypotheses being tested. What used to be just venting turns into strategic intelligence. You stop seeing yourself as someone life keeps beating down, and you start acting like a commander, someone who scans the battlefield before taking the next step. It's a quiet identity shift, but a decisive one. Want to put this into practice right now? Try a simple spreadsheet with columns like date, situation, key phrase, reaction, result, next step. With just a handful of entries, the cycles jump out at you. Maybe you'll notice you always cave in when you're exhausted, or that the other person repeats the same move right after apologizing. Once visible, those patterns stop being traps. They turn into evidence against manipulation and blueprints for your next move. After you've mapped the patterns and turned your venting into evidence, life eventually stops asking for notes. It shoves the truth right in your face. That's what I call a clarity event. Usually it comes through undeniable betrayal, Infidelity, a broken agreement, a hidden financial lie. Something so concrete there's no room left for excuses or rationalizations. In that moment, the fantasy of control collapses. And the impact isn't just external, it's deeply internal. That painful thought shows up. I saw the signs and ignored them. It hits like a punch to the gut because it ties emotion and analysis together. It's not just about the other person's failure. It's the realization you already sensed it and chose not to act. That's when the shadow starts integrating. The repressed anger, the contained strength, the suffocated assertiveness finally find a channel. To avoid getting lost in the storm, you need a cold checklist. Ask yourself, what exactly happened? How often? What did the other person gain? What price did I pay? What warnings did I ignore? This simple list works like an antidote to emotional fog. It slices through the haze of justifications and brings you back to what's tangible. Here's a realistic example. Someone uncovers hidden financial transactions that always popped up during months filled with fights. Suddenly, the pattern clicks into place. Conflict created on purpose to cover the secret moves. There's no denying it. What once looked like coincidence is revealed as a scheme. And once the scheme is exposed, the naivete holding the relationship together crumbles. This kind of event has a strange effect. It kills naive hope, but in exchange it gives you something far more valuable, operational clarity. You stop waiting for the other person to change out of love, guilt, or sudden awareness. Instead, you see the game for what it really is without any veil. The pain doesn't vanish, but it transforms into fuel for decisions you never had the courage to make before. And this is exactly where your story begins to shift. What used to be messy survival starts turning into life strategy. But for that clarity to really take root, you've got to take the next step. Learning how to turn those boundaries into concrete action without getting stuck in the paralysis of fear. When it's time to act, the biggest mistake would be letting anger grab the wheel. The key is the exact opposite: surgical calm. It starts in the body. Slow breathing, steady posture, focused eyes. When your body's regulated, your memory stays sharp and your words come out clear. You don't need to yell because the real power is in coherence. It's like the silence between sentences hits harder than any explosion ever could. In this state, communication stops being theatrical and becomes factual. You speak in short, precise sentences. No sweeping labels, no room for misinterpretation. For example, in March, July, and yesterday you hit expenses after arguments. My boundary is transparency. Without it, I'll close the joint account. Straightforward, no insult, no drama. Just raw truth, laid out like a document no one can tear up. But the real difference isn't just in speaking, it's in deciding and executing. You don't debate the boundary. You repeat it calmly as many times as needed, and then you follow through. Change the password, move out, block contacts. The power isn't in the threat, it's in holding the line. Coherence speaks louder than 1,000 explanations because it shows you don't negotiate your dignity. Think of it like surgery. The surgeon doesn't cut to humiliate the body, but to keep the wound from getting infected. The same logic applies here. The goal isn't to prove you're right or bring the other person to their knees. The goal is to stop the bleeding, protect your integrity, and make sure emotional infection doesn't spread into every corner of your life. And the real turning point happens in that contrast. The manipulator expects chaos, screaming, tears, a breakdown they can use against you. But when they run into calm, coherence, and a boundary that's carried out, they lose control of the scene. The narrative that once painted you as explosive now exposes their own inconsistency. That's when the balance of power starts to flip. This kind of surgical calm doesn't come naturally at first, but it can be trained. And the more you practice it, the more you realize true strength isn't about reacting fast. It's about holding steady in the storm. And once that steadiness is locked in, the next step shows up. Rebuilding relationships on brand new terms so you don't repeat the old patterns. Once you discover the strength of spotting patterns, you need to realize this is a double-edged power. The same sharp observation that can free someone from a toxic cycle can also be twisted to control, manipulate, or dominate. Having the ability doesn't mean you have the license. That's where responsibility comes in. It's not enough to see, you've got to choose how to use what you see. To keep from losing yourself on that path, you need an ethical compass. 3 simple questions can work like a North Star. 1. Does my intention serve both people's well-being, or just my own? 2. Is there clarity or consent from the other person that I'm influencing or helping? 3. Is my response proportional to the harm, or am I using pain as an excuse to humiliate? If any of those answers lean no, it's a red flag to recalibrate. That's where responsibility protocols step in. They're like safety brakes. Take a 24-hour pause before big decisions. Keep confidentiality to avoid exposing someone unnecessarily. Choose consequences that are reversible and, whenever possible, shared or delegated. And above all, have someone, a mentor, therapist, or trusted advisor, who acts as a mirror to question your choices. Without that mirror, even good intentions can slide into abuse. The practical rule is simple but game-changing. Protect without dominating, confront without stripping dignity. That means using your assertiveness like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. A scalpel cuts, but it cuts to heal. A sledgehammer smashes just to prove strength. That difference might sound small, but it completely changes the impact you have on the people around you. And you can apply this concretely in daily life. Instead of punishing someone with coldness, silence, or revenge, you set distance with clear conditions. Something like, we can keep going, but only if there's full transparency with finances. That stance doesn't belittle the other person. It simply defines the healthy space where the relationship can exist. The boundary stays firm, but without cruelty. And it's exactly in this balance between power and ethics that a rare kind of authority is born. The kind that doesn't need to yell or manipulate, because it's rooted in clarity. But to sustain that over the long haul, you need something even deeper. A total reconfiguration of how you decide who earns a place in your life and who doesn't make it past the gate. The truth is simple and liberating. Sensitivity was never weakness. When you combine sensitivity with clear boundaries, something rare is born, your psychological sovereignty. That's the turning point. No longer living as an unconscious absorber, but stepping into conscious choice with data, boundaries, and consequences. When light and shadow unite, you finally become whole. And you don't have to wait to start. If you saw yourself here, turn your journal into a war room today. Grab a sheet of paper, draw 5 columns, and jot down 3 recent events. Date, situation, reaction, result, and next step. The rest takes care of itself. That tiny act is your first proof that you can turn pain into clarity, and clarity into action. If this video gave you clarity, hit the like button right now, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Also share what topic you'd like to see next. I read the comments, and honestly, that's where a lot of new content ideas are born. And to make it easier, I'll leave a simple template of my War Room spreadsheet down in the comments so you can start applying it right away. But don't leave just yet. On the screen, the next video will show you why losing motivation after facing your shadow isn't failure. It's a sign of transformation, and it'll help you keep that surgical calm when the system tries to pull you back in.